Let's go, Mr. Matty, because I think MrMattyPlays, he just posted a video with a ton of news on Starfield, didn't he? No, I'm not gonna.
Everybody, it's Matty here today, and you may have guessed it, new Starfield details. Now, is this gonna patch the wound left by the Game
16
Awards?
times
Probably
the detail.
not. Is it gonna give us a release date? No. Do we have new gameplay or screenshots? No. But
Dude, we're scratching for anything nowadays. It's so frustrating too. I'm glad that like Bethesda and Xbox fanboys and girls called them out for not having any presence at the Game Awards, because that was a little ridiculous. It was like a little ridiculous. Let's be honest. The fact Sony, yeah, Jim Ryan wasn't there, but Sony was still relatively present. They had a couple of things that they showed off. Ubisoft wasn't there. Well, no, they had Mario Rabbids. They did have that. Sparks of Hope DLC, I think it was. So they were there technically, but like Xbox, literally nothing. And it could be that Xbox is just waiting for E3 and they're going to go all out for that. That could be it. And in which case, in 6 months, we just will totally like space it. But it feels like they should have done something. And I don't know. The whole thing with Xbox right now makes me think that either they're incompetent or they have some master plan that's going to blow us all away. Because they've shown like nothing. They don't talk about anything. And it could be, honestly, the third possibility is that there is no master plan. They're very competent. And they're just simply keeping their mouths shut until its Activision deal is through. Because they know Sony will take anything and everything that they say and do and try to spin it into a reason that they like should not let the deal go through. Which I would guess is probably the thing. Perfect pause point. Yeah, well, I paused it with him like eyes closed. I didn't want to do him dirty like that. I love Matty, so we got to treat him right. The Starfield subreddit after the Game Awards was the funniest thing I've seen in a while. Really? I believe just a bunch of people trying to explain away why they weren't there. Ever since he mentioned Bethesda's stink in your interview with him, I always talk about certain games with their stink. It's so accurate. I know, right? He just casually mentioned, for those of you who missed the video, I was like, there's something about Starfield that just doesn't sit right with me. And he said, yeah, all of Bethesda's games have a Bethesda stink, and it's covered in it. And I was like, yeah, no, that's accurate. Because the moment, like even with those leaks that we saw 2 years ago with Starfield, we see a screenshot and we're like, oh, yep, that's Bethesda. This is real. And you don't really know why, but you can just tell, that's a creation engine. Yeah, yep, for sure. 16 times the stink.
16 times the detail.
By the way, 16 times the detail mugs available now. Like I said before, we have amazing quality, 16 times the detail. Amazing quality, stunning, brave, and beautiful. Cannot recommend them enough. Of course, I'm selling them, so you would hope that I would recommend them, but still, whatever.
today we're going to go through Constellation questions with Will Shen. Will Shen is the lead quest designer for Starfield. Fun fact, he is also the lead designer of Far Harbor. Now, if you were to ask me, Matty,
oh, I actually really like that. Far Harbor, I was going to do a dedicated video on it, because I really, like, honestly, Far Harbor is like a different game to Fallout 4. Far Harbor feels like what I wanted Fallout 4 to be in a really good way. If you've not played Far Harbor, you should. It's tremendous. Tremendous. Yes, Thesaurus, they are actually tremendous indeed.
what's the best thing Bethesda's done since Skyrim? My answer would be Far Harbor. Why is this important to point out? Well, Far Harbor had something that Fallout 4 didn't have, and 76 certainly doesn't really have, which
Branching decisions and consequence.
is choice and consequence.
Hey!
So to know that that was a big focus for the quest design of that expansion has me a bit encouraged on where Starfield could head. Random encounters are now whole locations on the planets you explore. So if, for example, you could go to an outpost, discover a group of people with an issue, this would be different from just, say, one person dropping by you in the wasteland in Fallout 4. And the issue that he describes is maybe they have a member of their group that's been kidnapped and they point you to another location. So then they place that person in this dynamically created settlement in a dynamically placed dungeon, his words, not mine. And that's sort of your quest line.
So it sounds like it's slightly more dynamic content akin to what we saw in like Skyrim. Fallout 4 had it too, but Fallout 4 had it in a really negative way, which was the, you know, a settlement needs your help. And I think that this is going to be better than that, but it's hard to say because this is kind of obscure and vague.
Taking that technology, they're evolving it where it's now locations, dynamic settlements, and dungeons. And I just don't know how to feel about that. To me, that was one of the weakest parts of Fallout 4. It gave the game more of a focus on quantity, not quality approach. And I would rather almost the Mass Effect 1 approach where you'd show up on a planet, you'd find maybe one outpost in the middle of nowhere, and there's a little storyline attached to it. But instead here, because there's going to be so many planets, a lot of them are going to be filled with these dynamic settlements and dynamic dungeons. What this means is this game will, I think, undoubtedly have its own version of another settlement needs your help. I'll mark it on your map. I just don't know.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that they're also going to have like a social credit system where like there will be multiple points in the story where it says, oh, you need to just like secure this system. Secure the system by completing, you know, these faction quests to raise the level of like influence in that system or district or whatever of planets. And then you'll go around and you'll have to complete a ton of these random things. Without a doubt, that's going to be a thing. Without a doubt. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. I think it can get super repetitive, but it comes with the territory. The issue with these sci-fi games as video games, if you approach them as video games, where you're trying to like keep engagement up really high and refine the process down, it's like the scale we're talking about is just different. Because like Star Citizen, you'll play that, and it takes a solid 10 minutes from when you boot up the game to get to your ship to taking off. And then you got to leave the atmosphere, and then you got to plot your point on where you want to go, and then you've got to get the thrusters going, and then you'll get the boosters going, and then you'll take off to, you know, with your warp drive to that place, and that might take a few minutes. It's like a whole process, right? And then once you arrive there, there's probably, you know, a dozen or so places on the planet that are worth going and exploring. Or you can go anywhere else on the planet if you want. But by definition, I mean, if you're playing in a sandbox the size of a solar system or the size of a galaxy, you are dealing with a lot of empty space. A lot of empty space. There's a reason that they don't set games in the entire state of Kansas or Nebraska, because it's 95% open grassland and nothing else. Same with this. Like, you have to give the player a ship to travel very quickly across this planet because everything you see in the distance, you can go there. But there's really no reason to land right here and walk around in this crevasse. Like, crevasse. Like, I guess you could. It might be interesting. You might see something cool or unique or different. But I don't know, man. I just don't know if it's... It's a lot harder to pull these things off, I think, than people know. Like this, cool screenshot. What do you do? You know, and this was the question people had with with No Man's Sky. And funnily enough, I also received some death threats for No Man's Sky because I asked chat, like we streamed one day, and that was back in the day when we would stream once every 2 months and we had like 4 people in there. But I would ask chat and I'd be like, so what do you do? They said, well, you can do anything. They said you can be a soldier, you can be a mercenary, you can be a medic, you can do whatever. I was like, okay, but what do you do if you're doing those things? Have they shown like what the gameplay looks like? And of course they hadn't, because they didn't have the gameplay to show, because it wasn't a thing. Yeah, I received death threats for it. I don't know what it is. It's these sci-fi games. People get all into them. Star Citizen I received death threats for, and then also No Man's Sky. Sure did. But with this, it's like, yeah, that's cool. That's impressive tech that they generated this dynamically. But what do you do? That's the question.
The dynamically placed objectives on your map. And
Last of Us death threats? I don't think so. Honestly, I think the Last of Us Part 2 video I did, because it was so big, I think a lot of the trolls didn't have the patience to sit through it, to find things to poke and prod. And I set it up in a very specific way, so I only really started talking about Abby and Ellie and the thematic choice to do what they did. I only talked about that towards the end of the video. So the only people that were watching to discuss that part in the comments were people who were like already engaging intellectually honestly to watch that whole thing. So I think it's just, you know, I kind of dodged it.
Definitely, but to me, this reads and sounds like the Minutemen questline, and to me, that was the part of Fallout 4 I cared the least for. Even, yes, below the dialogue. Like, I just thought, to me, that was just fetch quest stuff, so...
It really was, but there's also, I think it was packaged in a really poor way, because Skyrim also had these dynamic quests where they said, like, I think Todd Howard said famously, there are unlimited quests in Skyrim. The game will never end. It's because they do have some dynamic quests that automatically generate. That's true. But in Skyrim, there was so much other stuff that was kind of in front that took the focus. And then also, like, I think that it also just did a better job of hiding those dynamic quests. Whereas in Fallout 4, it's just such a meme to do another settlement needs your help. Partially because they made it so every line of dialogue that cues that in is him saying another settlement needs your help. And then it just says that over and over and over and over and over again. I never understood, maybe there's a game dev that can tell me, why don't they just create a list of 100 different ways of saying that? Have the voice actor record that over the course of half an hour. It'll cost you maybe like $100-200 to pay him to do that. And then you just put that on the games, in the game's files. And every time you request that new dynamic quest, it just goes down the list until you reach 100. Then once you go to 101, it loops back to 1. And then you just go back through the list again. Like, by that point, players won't remember. Very few players are going to do 100 another settlement needs your help quests, right? Like, why not just say, oh, by the way, we got a message. It's out here. I wanted to go help them myself, but I couldn't. I've got to stay here. But if you could check it out for me, that'd be great. Then the next time you go in there, you're like, a settlement just sent out a distress beacon. It shouldn't be anything too crazy, but you should go check it out. Like, just say it slightly differently, and it won't be so meme-worthy. But I guess they just... I think they benefit off of the memes partially, which maybe that's why they don't do it. But hey, before you go save the world, go over and head over to insert random cave in Valkyrieth Hold and fetch insert random werewolf related item. For me, I love the Huntress. Yeah, no, that's kind of what it is. Yeah, no, that's accurate.
I imagine it's not going to be a focal point, and we did have Todd Howard already say there's more handcrafted content in Starfield than any of their previous games, but this is kind of tying into that planet concern some of you may have had as well, where we had 1,000+ planets in Starfield. Now you know what content may...
At this point, I don't think Todd Howard lies. I think he is trying to be honest, but he's just so... He's a salesman. Like, the way I always describe Todd Howard, he is an amazing salesman. And he is very, very good at convincing people to buy his games. Part of the way, part of the technique he uses to do that is that he finds really cool data points or really cool tidbits of info, and then he's able to pitch that as a selling point. And, it's like you just have to ask simple questions like this. You look at this map here. Todd Howard will tell you anything you see on screen, including that other planet, you can go to. You can explore, you can step on it, do whatever. Like, that sounds great. Like, wow, that game's going to be awesome. But pause. Why does that mean the game will be awesome? Like, that's not a given. You have to ask, okay, well, then why does that follow? Sean, you madman. Thank you so much. Sean's popping off. Sean is like...
Sean Dara donated 50 Australian dollars through Super Chat. Just a 16x the hello.
Thank you so much, Sean. Very, very generous. Appreciate you, my man. By the way, everybody who is interested in becoming a member, we had a members only stream last night, where we just, if you were a member, you could join in, and we played Call of Duty multiplayer together. We chatted and hung out. It was super, super fun. So if you are interested in becoming a member, definitely do it, because I think we're going to be doing it. I have to settle on the time, but we're going to do it once a week. We might do Tuesdays. I'm not sure. We might also shift it around, but it's a really good time. Really, really good time. But anyway, all of this to say, I think just whenever somebody like Todd tells you something, you have to ask, okay, but what, like, why is that useful? Why is that supposed to sell me on it? Just because you're saying it like it should convince me doesn't mean that it should convince me,
1,000+ planets in Starfield. Now you know what content may populate it, and it can have its own Fallout 4 feel in that way. And it's pretty rare I'm super critical of something we've heard about Starfield, because everything I've heard so far has been great. So this is one I'm putting the concern alert on. I'm just going to say right now, not crazy about what I hear there, but as long as it doesn't overtake the main content, which I thought the settlement stuff did, then I'll be okay with it. If it's just extra stuff, if I want to play the game more, cool. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep moving on. The next thing that Will spoke about was the main quest line. So one of the questions that he was asked was about our solar system, and will we go back to that? And he does confirm that you do this early in the main quest, and you go back to our solar system, which they call the Old Neighborhood. I thought that was pretty cool. And you're investigating what happened to Earth. And eventually you go to Mars, which is an early settlement that humanity created when they had left Earth, and it is called Sidonia. You actually see a little bit of that. They gave context.
Well, that's cute. You better believe there's going to be tons of like SpaceX Easter eggs and like Fallout Easter eggs and stuff. It's going to be a whole thing. I wonder, have they said if it's in the same universe as Fallout? Because it would be really interesting if they did it so it's the same universe as Fallout. Remember doing tons of Radiant quests to restore the Thieves Guild to its former glory to complete that fiction quest line? Yeesh. They gave Rockstar Games a run for the longest fetch quests. Oh yeah. A random Tesla on a planet. Dude, I bet they do that. The red Speedster or Roadster, whatever it was called. I bet they do that. You'll be able to find it crash somewhere.
Text to an image we've already seen. So this location that you're seeing on screen right now is Mars.
And
I thought that was nice to kind of pull together a little bit, but I like the idea of going back to our own solar system because I think it grounds Starfield a little bit, which is something that Todd Howard has said they are trying to do. And I think that's really important because if you watch some of my gameplay breakdowns, when I saw certain flags in the background and whatnot, I remember suggesting possibly that we could go back to our own solar system, maybe even Earth. And now we're seeing that that very well may be the case here with Starfield. That has me tremendously excited. And it also makes me feel pretty good that your boy got some speculation right in one of his breakdowns. I remember there was a time that I overanalyzed those things and people made fun of me during the Fallout 4 days. So, haha, joke's on you now. But
I do remember there was one video. Matty, oh man. I asked him about this one time and he was like, oh yeah, dude, don't even remind me. That was so cringe. But I'm going to show you because it's pretty funny. MrMattyPlays Fallout 4 speculation. I think he reacted to it.
Salutations, my Fallout lovers. It is Matty here today.
This is like what Matty is this? This is 7 years ago.
Live with you guys. I'm making a fun. Dude, salutations, my Fallout studios that they publish games for.
Oh, young Matty, dude.
Fallout 4 announcement day, or that's no, it's just an addition of a shirt.
Oh yeah, they added a shirt to their website, and then he made a video where the whole thing was like, oh, it's actually a secret announcement.
Thank you. Good boy. Yes. No, you don't even have to explain yourself. I heard enough. You didn't believe the hype there. Good shit, Matty. Good shit. Fallout 4. Prey 2's cancellation and how it affects Fallout 4. This is one less game Bethesda has to focus on and publish and gives...
I love it. When people get hyped over games, everything turns into supporting the thing they're hyped for. Every single thing. And in this case, it was, Prey 2 is canceled. So it's actually really good news because Fallout 4 now is going to come out sooner. I think the worst one I ever saw, though, was there was like a map he was looking at. This. Look at this.
Picture. Well, once you see this side-by-side comparison, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
They posted this Cyber Monday sale for their store. And then this is the video he made.
As you can see, I actually don't, Matt. I actually don't. The thingy looks a lot like Boston. You can see the map. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And across the side,
it's just like I don't know, man. I don't see it. I don't see it, dude. And this is exactly how I feel when people do the like Grand Theft Auto 6 speculation. I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? And I'm sure Bethesda was also like, this is December 2nd of 2013. He posted this September of 2014. And it's just like, no, it's just a poster. Nope. I don't see how that's related to that. But, oh man, old school Matty. I watched him back in those days as well, watching the... watching the speculation and trying to figure out when Fallout 4 was coming out. Yeah, back in the day, I was all in.
Anyway, I thought this was really cool information, and again, I think it grounds Starfield in a way that makes it more believable. And so if you were to start there, which is what he's saying, it's early in the quest line and then go beyond, I think it's a great starting point. It makes a lot of sense. So that is what's going on with our solar system, and we'll learn more about that when we begin Starfield, so a little bit of context on the beginning of the game. But then after this, he gets into factions. Now, factions are, I think, everything in a Bethesda Game Studios game. So this was probably the most important section of the video. When I think of the factions, I think of course, Fallout, which I know Bethesda isn't fully responsible for. Like, we already knew the Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, like, these factions existed within previous Fallout games that Bethesda had no involvement in. But something like Elder Scrolls is a better example to look at as the pillars of the world. Your Thieves Guild, your Fighters Guild, your Dark Brotherhood. To me, they are these amazing storylines that are a little more self-contained. And typically, it's a bit of a coming-of-age story as you rise to the top in every single one of these factions and end up being the leaders of them. So is that the case here in Starfield? Well, Will gave us some interesting context on that. He says that the main story will start with a bit of a tour to get you familiar with the major players first. And they want the stories to be more personal, influencing where the factions are going to go. So one example he gives us is the politics of the Freestar Rangers, saying should they go towards justice or industry, and you sway something like that. He describes it as not being like Skyrim where you become the leader of every faction, but more so just having influence within stories that are a part of these factions, and that they'll...
I prefer that. The thing that always drove me crazy in Skyrim was like you just casually walk in and then they're just like, oh, you're new here. Yes, I am new here. Okay. Do you want to be like the president of our organization? Sure. Yeah, why not? Okay, well, do like 2 things over the course of 20 minutes and then you can be the president of our organization. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. You know, so I think this is a good change. Do they all have crossed eyes? I'll look for it on this next round. Maybe. Slightly. Yeah. Does he sound like Ben Shapiro? Yeah, at 1.5 times speed. A little bit. Wait a minute. Are we going to land on Earth? I don't think they've said that. I think they said, like, you can go back and visit the solar system, but I don't think they confirmed that you could land on Earth. But probably. I wonder if the player in Starfield will be playing a type of hero or just some random dude. It'll probably be the mercenary kind of thing.
Consequences of the factions and what they do care about.
Well, honestly, actually, the Bethesda tradition is to have the player character start as a prisoner. You remember Oblivion, how that started. You remember Skyrim, how that started. In Fallout 4, they did it so you're like captive to the ice, maybe. I guess you could say that, like, yeah, you're frozen, so maybe like you're captive there. I have very little faith in this game. I'm almost convinced it'll launch absolutely broken and busted. That's my default position with Bethesda nowadays. I see no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt. Same thing for the record. Same thing with CD Projekt Red. After this next gen update for The Witcher 3 on PC, I have very little faith in them polishing stuff before putting it out. So my starting point now for both companies is it'll probably launch broken.
So what I think this means is
difference is Starfield now is going to be on Game Pass. So as long as you aren't buying it on Steam for like $70, you should be okay.
Not going to get a New Vegas, if you will, where that was my interpretation when we were seeing all the factions, that they were going to sort of interconnect and maybe all going after the same set of...
Matty, are you holding the microphone? What is this? An MTV crib tour? Like what? He said his mic stand broke. Oh, that sucks. That's a bummer. I've wanted to get a new boom arm than this thing because this thing is ass. And this thing is more expensive than like the cheap one I had before. I got it because Joe Rogan used it and it's horrible. It's an awful mic boom arm. It's not spring loaded. It's just like clunky and plasticky. It's horrible. Dreadful. You notice I taped over the logo so you can't see the logo because I don't want to give them any free advertising. It's like Gate or something. Don't buy it. It's terrible.
Artifacts at the center of the universe or whatever it is that Constellation is also looking for in Starfield. It sounds like all these different factions have their own stories and that you're going to get involved in them. It's not like you're going to suddenly become the leader of the Freestar Rangers over time, but rather help them solve a problem and have influence on the outcome. Here's why I'm in the middle on it. I like the idea of the New Vegas interconnection, but the reason why them being independent could also be good, and this is what balances me out, is when they're independent and not influencing other parts of the game, I think they can be more far-reaching because they are self-contained. That is when RPG storylines can be at their best, certainly because it's not influencing a million other things, so it's, let's be real, not as difficult to implement. It's still tough to set up a quest line, but this means that you can go a little bit more crazy because it is in a more confined space. It is maybe just attached to this city or just this town or just this settlement, just this group of people, not this group of people over across the galaxy, et cetera, et cetera. So I really like that it is going to be self-contained, but if it doesn't have that branching choice and consequence that I truly am going to be looking for in Starfield, not in the level of something like Wasteland 3, but something that feels like I had an impact, if that's not there, I will be disappointed because it seems like they are making design decisions to get us closer to that. Now, again, to play devil's advocate with myself, I do wish there was that cutoff of maybe getting to be a part of certain factions. I think it's going to be weird if, based off the way Will described it, that I can join the Freestar Collective, which, based off our introduction to them, they're like, we're by the people, for the people. But then I can also maybe join the Space Pirates? I don't know how I feel about that because that feels like a disconnect from the narrative. How can I be this really good guy over here and this bad guy over here? This goes back to Bethesda's philosophy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know how they balance that.
philosophy when they make their games of doing everything in one playthrough and being able to undo stuff that you've set up in your character creator during a current playthrough. So Todd has indicated some of those decisions. Now we're hearing it with Will. This is going to be a game where I think there will be choice and consequence, but it's sounding more and more like they want you to see everything in one playthrough. And that's a probably data-driven decision, no doubt. Like, hey, how many people are actually going back and replaying games? I think what's cool about RPGs is that I can have my one storyline with all of my influences felt around the galaxy, and that's just my story to tell. And that
This is one of those frustrating things because a lot of game development nowadays is like ideated through spreadsheets and focus testing and stuff like that. Here, I think they're probably doing something similar where they're looking at the data, like Maddie said, and they're seeing, okay, well, 95% of players play the game once, and that's it. So if we have 100 interesting things to do in the game, but most players in one playthrough are only going to be able to do 15, we're leaving a lot of stuff on the table. A lot. And they're going to miss it. It's kind of, I brought it up in the Ragnarok critique, where I feel like a lot of the coolest bits in the game are in the end game after the credits roll. But I feel like most players probably walk away after the credits roll. I don't have numbers to back that up, but I would guess a lot of players maybe put another few hours in, but they don't go and spend another 20 hours after the story's over. Especially with some of the stuff that, that happens at the end of that game. So I don't know. Bugbear, hello from Hong Kong. Hello. That's crazy. Isn't it amazing that we can all be here chatting together so spread out across the planet? It's amazing to me. We live in the future. It's crazy.
I don't have to go back and replay it multiple times, but in fact that when someone shares their story with me, that it's something a little bit different. Or if I find a clip online 3 years ago, it makes me appreciate the game more. I feel like RPGs are seeds that you plant in the ground, you water and you grow them over time, you nurture them right. They don't just, boom, sprout out of nowhere. That love grows over time, and I think it's through things that you miss in this particular genre. So I am a little uncertain on that, but I also respect that not everyone wants to play the game like me, which is multiple times through. Not everyone has time for that, so I get why Bethesda's doing it. The last thing...
I'm down to play the game multiple times through. But my biggest concern with Starfield right now, in addition to the tech issues that have plagued Bethesda games for a long time, my biggest concern is that the combat looks rough. It just does. When I did that collab with Maddie even came out and said, yeah, the combat looks pretty rough. It's got the Bethesda stink, right? And if the Bethesda stink is all over the combat and the combat is just clunky and bad, I think getting through one playthrough is going to be tough. Much less getting through 2 or 3 to see all the other content. Because to me, the combat that they've shown looks markedly worse than Fallout 4's combat even. This guy in a YouTube comment section said RPGs can't have good gunplay. Yeah, that's an L take. It's just immediately like you're special pleading, you're making exceptions for somebody. On par with High on Life. High on Life is so weird and goofy. High on Life, like, it's decent. The enemy variety is pretty terrible, but like it's so outrageous. I'm really enjoying it.
To get into our companions. We've already seen one companion in Vasco. Here's a really cool feature. It turns out they can speak for you. So an example that Will gives us is that you may not be able to get into an area, so you ask your companion to speak for you. They handle it for you, but now you have to rock with the consequences of how they handle it. So what this means is you can tap a companion on the shoulder to get you through certain quest lines or through certain locations, and that's pretty cool because that means whoever's following you does have some impact, some influence on the world. But they'll also be able to do the typical BGS follower things. You know, they'll be able to fight with you. Oh, they'll also be able to carry all of your equipment, but also they'll be a crewmate. So it sounds like all of your companions will be in one place over the course of the game, which means that you can kind of mess with the design of the game. And, let's say you leave your ship and they're like, we're not letting you in unless you're part of the Freestar Collective. So you go back to your ship, you get your Freestar companion, and you go, you're like, hey, buddy, you want to help me out here? But I like the idea of when your companion takes the reins, that you sort of have to deal with the consequences, because it's, when you think about it, what the player does to their own companions. The only thing is that the companions aren't real people, so we don't think much about it. But when you're making those choices and just dragging them into combat, you don't think twice about it, right? So it's kind of the same thing here with the companion being able to do that to you. So I really dig this idea. Will says that they're going to...
It's just so hard to know what any of this will actually look like in practice.
I'm going to talk a lot about how you handle things during the main storyline, so there will be reactions to certain moments throughout, and that you can determine the fate of whether or not people live or die or stay/leave a faction. So again, that back and forth to me when I rewatched it, I was like, am I hearing this right? Like, I'm hearing things that suggest choice and consequence like that. Like, that is clear as day. Like, you have a choice and it has a consequence. But
I also love his shirt.
then with the actual framework of the factions, I'm like, okay, how far-reaching are these consequences if they're self-contained? Because the way you described it is, yeah, they're not going to war with each other. They're pretty closed off. Like, they're their own storylines. They're separated.
The guy's shirt is what I want to do with him. Just, He looks cuddly. I'm not lying.
It's like, okay, but then he says at the end, they're far-reaching. So I don't want to be overly critical, overly analytical, but it's just something that had me spinning my wheels a bit. But overall, I like the transparency. I like what they're saying still. It's just I'm hearing a little bit more Fallout 4 energy in this video, in the quest structure. So we'll see how it goes. Certainly what I plan on doing when I'm playing this game is saving my game before major choices if I have a feeling they're coming, and replaying the quest line to see 2 different outcomes. We'll see how that goes. Because I saw some people do it with Fallout 4, and it was just kind of embarrassing how quickly things reconverged back to the same talking point. So, ladies and gentlemen, I leave it in your hands. Let me know what you are thinking in the comments down below. Other than that,
yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree with you guys. I have yet to see something about Starfield that's like, that's the thing. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to play. As of right now, it's still just like, okay, but like, what do we do though? It's like, oh, you're going to like explore and then complete the story quest line. I'm like, okay, but like, what do you do to do that? You're just going to like go fight through waves of enemies with bad combat? There's like base building, I guess. I don't know. I just kind of want more. Because I just don't see anything. Yeah, Luke, simp. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't had anything pull me in like that. Expectations are very low for Starfield. Maybe that's a good thing. Honestly, yeah, I think you might be right. It's honestly probably the best place that they could be right now. As far as I understand it, they don't really need to worry about pre-orders because I have this one hair that's just going crazy. Because Game Pass, you know, so they don't have to worry about pre-orders now. Honestly, game reviews, I don't think reviews are going to be very important for it. I don't think if this gets, let's say, an average of like 72 on Metacritic, I think it'll still get just as many engagements and downloads and stuff as it would if it got like an 85. If it gets 100, you'll probably see some extra people jumping on to try it, but I do not expect this to be like, you know, Skyrim 2 in terms of reception. I think it's going to be like, it's fine. It's good. Yeah. He took my thing.